Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I am not joined by my two co-hosts this evening. Hall got a flat tire today at the way to work, so he's getting his tire changed. Reed is working this evening all the way through recording, so you got me solo, but I will be accompanied by some guests here momentarily coming up in the near future. A lot has happened this week. I won't say a lot has happened. A lot of rumors have been circulating this week, going around about Washington, and a lot of things being said, like, for instance, people saying that Washington is more likely to trade out of number 2 than they are other teams. But then we're getting reports today saying, oh, actually, Washington is more than likely to stay put at where they're at. They're going to be getting their franchise quarterback. So in this episode, we're going to be able to discuss this, talk about the latest news, and be able to discuss these rumors and actually bring in some thought process into the equation here. But before we get going and into talking about the latest and greatest news, I want to answer a fan question that was submitted that was on YouTube. This is from Michael Luger. I appreciate you, Michael. Appreciate it very much. Who else do you want us to see to sign in free agency? At this stage in the game, we're kind of like in the middle of the road, right? Because this is where teams got their guys that they really, really, truly wanted. But now it's the waiting game for the draft, right? You set yourself up. You've built the foundation. Do you truly need to go out and pluck guys right now? Not necessarily, because more than likely the guys that are available right now are going to be available post-draft. So you want to be able to see what comes up for you in the draft, because you don't want to sign a free agent right now that's going to take you out of the ability to get a corner. Let's say if you were to get a corner in free agency, you don't want to take a corner that's going to take you out of the ability to draft a corner in late April. Might as well let it simmer, let it chill out a little bit, go on a vacation, maybe go down to Cabo, go enjoy these pro days and whatnot. But take into consideration that the draft is where you want to build your football team. You know, I think a lot of fans, myself included, get caught up in the hoopla of free agency and, oh, you need the big name guy to bring him in right now. You need production. You're really bad in this area. But I would imagine that teams look at free agency a little bit differently, in the sense that you want to get that production out of that player before they hit that contract, right? The old Dan Snyder way was paying for a contract of a player to hope to get that production. But more times than not, we have seen through free agency, ourselves alone over the past 20 years, that doesn't really give you the best results possible, except for a handful, I would say, like Deshaun Jackson or like London Fletcher, so to speak. Those guys are really productive for us, but they're a dime a dozen, right? It's hard to be able to get that kind of production out of a free agent, but you're happy to be able to get that. But building through the draft is where they want to go. So if there are any free agents I would like to see Washington go after, Michael, I think it's like Stephon Gilmore, somebody like that, a corner that you can add in here, or a possible left tackle. I've been thinking for a while, Michael, that I think trading for a left tackle is probably our best bet at the moment. You would like to think that Washington would be able to go and get a Troy Fontenot in the late first round, right? But it's hard to be able to say that, because there's going to be a team has to be willing to come out of that. And that's the hard part for me, is I love Jordan Morgan, but our scouts, are the team really 100% bought into the fact that he could start day one at left tackle? I'm not sure about that. And the guys that are available right now in free agency at left tackle, like David Bakhtiari, there's a lot of question marks there. And so this is the waiting game time for me personally, Michael. Let's wait. Let's see what the draft is able to give us, and then from there, let's move on and see what we need to bring in free agency to kind of just add some depth charges, so to speak, on what this Washington football team needs. But I forgot to say it earlier, but the Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. Now let's answer our fan questions, and this first one was submitted by the Colonel. He said, the last podcast, Coach Curl said the Commanders offered more than the Rams for Cam's services in L.A. Yet Sam Fortier wrote today the Commanders made no offer. What's the real gauge? Yeah, it's funny. Hall and I were talking about this in the group chat earlier. It's funny how it seems that nobody watches our show or cares about this podcast, but it seems that stuff that happens on here end up making their ways out in other ways. Basically, people are able to talk about what we're talking about without acknowledging the quiet part. And so what I'll say is this, Colonel. I talked to Coach, and officially they said they couldn't afford to pay what they wanted, but it was only like I think $500,000 more is what the coach is saying. If they want to go that route, it's cool. But because nobody offered the options that LA did, is essentially what Coach is saying. And I understand that. And there is going to be this sort of thing of each side wanting to kind of keep that strength, that barrier. It's like, no, I was like just willing to break up. No, I broke up with him. No, dude, I broke up with her. That sort of thing here is what I'm seeing. The fact of the matter is what Coach Curl did is brought light to the fact of what truly happened. And I heard people speculate and talk about that there was a difference in money and it was more so put on Cam Curl's side of the table, saying Cam Curl was not accepting of the offer and everything like that. But what I think is what Coach was doing here was shedding light on it to the fact that now people are talking about it to show that there wasn't a want in the first place. We knew what was going to be. I mean, when we knew that Josh Harris was buying this football team, we knew this was a possibility. Anybody that told you differently is not one to be trusted. But I understand the business aspect of it all, Colonel, but at the end all be all, does it truly matter? Because Cam is not on this football team anymore. He's been compensated for what he feels like he should be getting paid. He's playing football, and the team feels more comfortable now than they did before in free agency. So there's nothing to be mad about anymore. Everybody is happy, and let's just hope everyone moving forward has the best foot forward moving possible. But what I see here, Colonel, is that Coach did something strategically in order to put something out there in order to get that message across. And I think that you know what I mean by that, which is a good question. Now, the next one was submitted by the Colonel. His question is a really good one. He said, I'm excited about our free agency linebacker acquisitions. Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu were both captains on their former teams. With Jamin Davis reportedly taking on the Micah Parsons role in Dan Quinn's defense, how do you see their roles in 2024? This is really funny because they've added a lot of linebackers, right? Frankie Louvu coming in, being more so of a linebacker, attacking style, having 7 sacks last year in a very unproductive type of defense. I think that he is going to be probably your strong side linebacker. He's going to be close to the line of scrimmage or playing weak side if need be. Coverage seems to be a possible weakness of Frankie Louvu's, but the guy is an animal. He's an attack style guy. And what I see happening with Frankie Louvu is if you look at his body style, he's much more built for taking on running backs or being able to follow tight ends, much necessarily more so than being in the back end, right? And so Bobby Wagner at the moment it probably isn't your best pass coverage linebacker, but you'd feel good if you were to pre-snap put Bobby Wagner a little bit deeper and allow Frankie Louvu and Jamin to be closer to the line of scrimmage. Now you're playing with house money because you don't have to worry about Bobby stepping backwards. So I do think you're right in the sense that Frankie Louvu is going to be the attacking style along with Jamin. It's funny because when you look at these linebackers, it's not like they scream coverage. And the previous regime that we thought that were linebacker savants, right? That they were gurus in linebackers of being able to see what a linebacker is and the future of the NFL with linebackers. That wasn't the case here, where in the past they were all about coverage. Like Jamin showed the speed, the ability to cover, and the flexibility, the attributes, the traits. But when you see what Dan Quinn and others offer, they were able to get production out of guys like Leighton Vander Esch, who, yes, is a dog in his own right, but it's not like he is a freak of nature in the sense that he's going to blow somebody away with his capabilities on the field. So, in my opinion, I think that any linebacker in this position, Colonel, they're going to be a heat-seeking missile. At any point in time, they're going to be sent after the quarterback. And now we are joined by our guest, Mr. David Harrison. How are you doing on this beautiful Thursday evening, sir? How you doing, David?
I'm good, man. I'm sorry for being late. It's crazy out here, but
don't worry.
Sorry about that.
Don't worry at all, man. I like to hear myself talk. You know what I'm saying, David? I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there that can kind of feel that message. But my question to you, sir, Washington was at USC's Pro Day with Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been obviously widely noted and shown that Caleb was not as upfront and is I guess personable with the Bears front office as he was with the Commanders. Did that have you feeling any sort of way when you saw those pictures in the video?
I mean, it's everything is up to into interpretation. You know what I mean, and especially these guys who are kind of under this microscope of what's going to happen next, and
Mm-hmm.
who are their personalities, and who are they as a person when none of us really actually knows them as a person. I wouldn't read too much into a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, the Bears are going to have to make a decision based off of what they think is best for their franchise, and there's a world here where, how do I put this? So there's a part of this where people care about what the individual wants and would like to do and all of those things. But then there's also a part where it's like, okay, but what you want and what you would like is not as important as what the organization is
Right.
trying to get done. And then there's also kind of a side shoot of this. And I think we saw a little bit of this in the Lamar Jackson situation where the NFL, like the NFL is not this isolated business. Like I know they're the only, or well, not the only, but the king of pro football in America, right? But you also have Major League Baseball, you have the NBA, you have the NHL, and believe me, they all pay attention to each other. So, do the NFL owners want players having the amount of control that they have in, say, the NBA? I don't think so. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And I think that when you saw Lamar Jackson going out there and trying to do what he was trying to do when he was in his negotiations with the Baltimore Ravens, that was kind of a sign, and that's how everybody kind of took it, as the owners kind of closing ranks and saying, "Hey, look, guys, like we're not. This isn't how this is going to go." So Caleb Williams, is that going to be viewed this way by the owners, right? Are the owners going to come together and say, "Hey, look, we can't let this kid come through here and dictate to us the way other things are going to happen"? You go back to other examples of like Eli Manning and John Elway and Jim Kelly and all this stuff, and you can say, "Well, it's already been done. There's already a precedent set," and that is certainly possibly true. But you have to understand the context of the environment that we're in today, with NIL deals, with all this other stuff. If the owners feel threatened in a way where, well, if we let Caleb get away with forcing the Chicago Bears to either trade back to Washington or trade him to Washington, either way, then what else are we risking with the current changing atmosphere of football? Because believe me, the changing atmosphere in college football absolutely impacts the National Football League in a very real way.
Yeah, and the conspiracy theorist in me was screaming when you brought that up about the how the NFL views themselves, because it makes you wonder about Deshaun Watson, man. But we don't need to go down that tinfoil hat route. But speaking of things that don't truly matter in leading up to the draft here, JJ McCarthy is being taken out to dinner by the Commanders brass ahead of Michigan's pro day. Just I want you to be able to say the two-word sentence that everyone loves to talk about: due process here. Obviously, we
Mm-hmm.
both agree on that. Just what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, yeah, due process is something that they have to go through, right? But I will say this: if there wasn't at least some sort of interest there, they wouldn't be going to do those links, right? So
Okay.
due process is you go to the pro day, you meet the kid, you talk with them on the side, maybe you have a meeting with them at
That's
the
fair.
event. Like having a meeting on campus is very regular business. Having dinner with them, I don't want to sit here and say like it's completely out of left field and nobody's ever done that. Like that, you know what I mean? Like it's not that crazy,
Yeah.
but in the scale of like if it's a one, it's like, okay, you sent an assistant scouting, as a scouting assistant to the pro day, and a 10 is you brought the owner down with a contract ready to get the kid to sign. Having dinner with him before the pro day, it's like a 6. You know what I mean? So it's not nothing, but it's not everything either, right? I think Adam Peters and Dan Quinn even have made it clear that really nothing is off the table, and we're still more than 30 days away from the NFL draft happening, so there's no reason to start taking things off the table. Like, I don't know Adam Peters' process specifically, but I've talked to other GMs and I've talked to other executives and other coaches about the draft process and everything. And honestly, if you have a draft, or if you have a GM or a front office that really likes playing the trade game, they don't really start taking things off the table until 48 hours out from round one. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
even then, it may not be completely off the table. It just may be like, we're probably not going to go that route. You know what I mean? So in essence, you're 100% right. And honestly, right now, what they're doing, why not? Like, why not go out there? You know what I mean? Like, what do you have to lose? You'd be sitting in Ashburn watching more tape, or you sit in a hotel in Los Angeles or in Ann Arbor watching more tape. Like, you know what I mean? So there's really no reason not to do it. But as far as as far as whether or not he's going to be the pick of number 2, I still think we're too far away for that. I don't think that's what you should be looking at.
And then David, I heard this question asked. I think it was on Twitter or on our Discord, and it's a great one. If let's say you were JJ McCarthy in that situation, what would you order? Because like, are you going to order the most expensive thing, or are you going to go the cheaper route? It's a great question.
I mean, honestly, you just order what you like. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
I'm a ribeye guy. I'm a ribeye, sweet
There you go.
potato, and Caesar salad. Like that's my favorite
How do you
dinner.
like it? How do
Like
you like your ribeye cooked?
you know what? Honestly, I can take it almost any way. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Like it really kind of just depends. But typically, I go medium. Like
Okay.
typically, I just kind of go medium. But I could eat it any different way. That's this is a total tangent you don't want to talk about. But like my father was always a well done guy. My wife's a well done
Really?
woman. And my mother is rare. Like my mother would make me steak, and I mean that thing punched me in the face as soon as it sat down in front of me and was like, "I'm going to eat you." Right? So I can kind of eat my steak, however. But here's my thing about like all of these, and I don't know what all the agents are telling these players, right? But to me, at the end of the day, man, just be you, just be
Yeah.
authentic, just be real, because especially as a quarterback, because once you and this isn't unique to the NFL. Like I don't care what business you're in. I don't care if you work at the gas station, the Fortune 500, you're a school teacher, you're a cop, you're a soldier, you're a football player. We all know fake. You know what I mean? Like once you work with somebody for long enough, you know fake. And as a quarterback, you can't afford to be fake. Like bottom line, like if you're fake, everybody's gonna know it, everybody's gonna pick up on it, and nobody's gonna have your back privately. Publicly, maybe they might just do the good soldier thing, but privately, they're not gonna have your back, and that's what really matters, to be honest with you. So if you're JJ McCarthy, you know any of these guys, Caleb Williams, Drake May, just go be authentic. You know what I mean? So like I said, if they're and that's a really convoluted way to answer your question, like what do you order? But it does it does matter because
Yeah.
because it sets the tone for the entire conversation of who are you. You know, this is a job interview, granted, but it's a leadership interview. You know what I mean? And when you're interviewing leaders, when you're interviewing to be someone's leader, you want them to hire you based off of who you are. Because if you go in there faking the funk, man, 30 days in, they're gonna realize they got the wrong dude. And if they once they realize they got the wrong dude, you're on your way out. Like it may take a while for the process, right? But as soon as they realize they got the wrong dude, you are on your way out.
And not only that, just the NFL being a different animal, like in business altogether, and the fact that you have millions of people watching your every move, you probably shouldn't be
Yep.
faking this to be put on that pedestal just to be there, because more than likely, to your point, you're not going to be successful, and all those eyes they're going to put it all on you. And I'm not sure
Yep.
if you want to put yourself in that situation. Just be yourself. You don't want to put yourself in the wrong situation. That being said, Washington added James Pierre, another cornerback today. They've been doing a lot of cornerbacks as of late, recently added in here. But in the grand scheme, David, what does the free agency tell you? And sidebar off of that, what grade would you give Adam Peters and the Commanders for their free agency moves so far?
Oh, I hate grades.
Don't give grades
But
then. Just how do you feel about it?
so this is my way too serious opinion on grades. The reason I hate grades is because all a grade really tells you is whether I agree with your moves or not, right? Because if I agree with every move you made, I'm gonna give you an A.
Yeah.
If I disagree with every move you made, if I'm like they can only get young linebackers, you go sign Bobby Wagner, I'm gonna give you a D. You know what I mean? Or I might say like I'll give you a C because Bobby deserves respect. But but all that means is I disagree with you, right? So
Right.
here's the way I would put it though. When you came into the offseason, we looked at this roster, right? And I think realistically said they got to figure out quarterback. Even if you love Sam Howell, you got to figure out quarterback. Just leave it at that, right? You got to figure out quarterback. You need a second running back if you don't bring back AG. You could use another receiver or two. Your offensive line needs a lot of help. Your edge needs a lot of help. Your linebacker room needs a lot of help. And your secondary certainly needs an infusion of new talent and new blood. What have they gone and done? They've gone and done pretty much a little bit of all of that kind of stuff, right? Like they have a quarterback plan. We don't know exactly what it is yet. It might look like Jaden Daniels, might look like Caleb Williams, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, who knows? But they have a quarterback plan. So they're figuring that out. Boom. They've addressed the offensive line. Is it going to be successful? I have no idea. But they've addressed the offensive line. They've addressed the tight end room. I didn't even mention that before. They've gone and gotten a second running back, et cetera, down the list. So what they have done, and this is something that I keep reiterating on my own show, is Adam Peters has put himself in a position that when you come to the NFL draft outside of number 2 overall, you don't know what Washington has to do.
Right.
You know what they could do, right? You know what they could do. But I even recently did a mock draft of my own where Chop Robinson was sitting there at 36. Not going to happen. But you know what? Blame PFF. Don't blame me. Chop Robinson is sitting there at 36. And I got 2 offensive tackles. I got the kid from BYU and Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. And I apologize to BYU's. He's a great talent. I just can't remember how to say his name right now. There you go. Man, nailed it. So I got 2 offensive tackles. Both have some questions, right? Both like the BYU kid that you can say better than I can. He's a little bit raw. He needs a little bit more polish on him. Maybe he's not going to be ready right away. Question marks. Joe Morgan, he might need a shift inside. Question marks. Guess who doesn't have question marks? Chop Robinson. So in my mock at 36, I took Chop. right? Other GMs might be looking at that and say, nah, they're tackle. They got to go tackle because look at your roster. But I also have 40, so I could go tackle at 40. I could go tackle at 36 and at 40. You know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
that's what you want to do is make other GMs look at your board and not be able to predict what you're going to do because that's when the Giants, the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Ravens, that's when they jump ahead of you to take your guy. And if you're a GM playing this game, honestly, I think probably what you would love more than just nailing a trade is having a team jump ahead of you to get a guy they think you want and you don't even want him. Like that, to me, that would be great. Like, look at all that money you spent to go buy a car I ain't even looking at, bro. So that would be the best thing. And that's what GMs want is maximum flexibility. The fact that if they pick at number 2, it's a quarterback does not matter. Like everybody in the world can know that, and it doesn't matter. They can know who it is. Like, to be quite honest with you, the NFL would hate them for it, but the Chicago Bears come out right now and be like, yeah, once Caleb gets into Chicago, here's what we're going to do with him. And then Washington say, yeah, after that, once Jaden gets over here, here's what we're going to do. But of course, the NFL would be incredibly upset. I think the Arizona Cardinals did that with Kyler, and that's why like the number one overall pick always goes to the end of the clock, even though there's no reason for it. Things like that. But so that is what Adam Peters has done. So from that standpoint, the objective of every general manager in the NFL, you got to give him an A because that's the objective right now, and he's achieved that.
Yeah, and that being Chop Robinson actually went to my alma mater, Clarksburg High School, but then money got involved and he transferred to Quince Orchard for his last couple of years. Good for him, which was smart for him to go to Penn State. But I want to ask you this question. I don't want to go back in the past, but like I was obviously I was kind of upset with Cam Curl leaving, but I understand the business aspect and the turnover. And so for me, the difference between Ron Rivera and Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, the way that they're doing things. Do you think that one of the problems that Ron Rivera had when he first got here was not having a bigger turnaround initially like Dan Quinn and Adam Peters are having currently?
So I will put it like this. From my perception, I think the biggest problem Ron Rivera had during his tenure was doing things for the wrong reasons. Okay. He didn't always do things because they made the most football sense. And that's a slippery slope to walk down. Because once you make a decision for non-football reasons, it muddies how you make the rest of your decisions. It's almost like a lie. And I'm not saying that Ron Rivera is a liar, but like once you tell one lie, you gotta tell another to mask it, and et cetera, et cetera.
That happened a couple times, David.
Right, and again, this isn't just the NFL, right? Like if you're running a business, you may have like a favorite employee, but does that mean that person, what's best for your business is for that person to work the sexiest job in the building? Maybe not. Maybe this other person is better suited for that job, and that's what you need to do. It's about making sure that your product is the best, because at the end of the day, they're all in performance-based business, and I think that's where he made a mistake. And I think this team, what they're doing is they're putting guys in place for performance-based reasons, and they're making their decisions based on performance. And you even look at the new contracts, out of the 20 new contracts, and out of I think we're up to 16 right now that we have hard details on. I think of those 16, 9 of them are 1-year deals. Mm-hmm. And then like 3 more of them are deals that they could easily get out of next year if they need to, take a little bit of dead cap. But you look at a team in Washington who has signed 20 new contracts this offseason, started with $90 or so million in cap space, depending on whose projection you believe. They now have less than $50 million. So they've spent about $50 million in salary cap. They're going to spend about 10 or 12 more in draft capital, paying their draft picks. So this team's about to spend about $60 million in one offseason. Next year, and this is according to Over the Cap, but next year, their projected cap space is $99 million. So they're literally setting up this roster with all these exciting pieces and all this potential. But guess what? If that potential doesn't pan out and isn't best for football business, you'll just leave. You know what I mean? And we'll find new guys. Yeah. And that includes the new guys they're bringing in, the guys that they love. That includes the guys that they're inheriting, because I think that's really the key to starting off fresh with a franchise is understanding that you may have studied, you may have played against guys that you're inheriting, but you don't really know them. You know what I mean? So for this year, you get to know the guys that you have. You get to know the guys you inherited. Look, the guys you know from other places. Dante Fowler may come into Washington, and for whatever reason, it just don't work here. Like in Texas, it worked great. In the DMV, it didn't work. We don't know why. We can't explain, but bro, go back to Dallas or go to Houston. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you move on next year. And that gives you – so next year this time, we'll be talking about a GM and a coaching staff, and hopefully all the coaches are back, because that means things went relatively well, but nobody got hired away, that now has a full 365 with these players. They know them. They didn't just studied them, played against them. They actually know these dudes. They know each other. They know they have the year of learning, and they've got $100 million. And as of right now, they've got all their draft capital. You know what I mean? And maybe even more to come. That is, to me, that is the perfect scenario. It's great to be in this position they are right now. Number 2 overall pick, $90 million, great. But having a year of experience with your team, with your system, with your style, having 100 mil in cap and a full draft, that's a dream. That's the dream right there.
I could totally understand what you mean by that, but coming in here, they were kind of a rock and a hard place with how much money they had and what you already
Yeah.
had here in the contracts. But it's so funny, the great segue, because my next question I had for you, to wrap this up, David, I only have a couple more. But my question for you, with that 60 million that Washington has right now, because you kind of already answered it, my question was, what are they going to do with it? And I understand like you could branch it off of going into next season, but my thought process was, do you see them adding anybody else that could be expensive, like via trade or if a release happens?
Mm. Expensive? No, I
Okay.
don't. I wouldn't predict that. I mean,
Okay.
never say never, right? But
Right.
I would not necessarily predict that. And I mean, you look at the guys who are potentially on the market. Like I always kind of have a little bit of a struggle, and part of it is because I don't know these guys. Like you look at a guy like Brandon Ayuk, who's been on a really successful team. They've
Yeah.
they've been to the playoffs. They've been to the Super Bowl. And he's like, but it's not enough. I was like, okay, but why isn't it enough? And fortunately for Washington, if they're looking at a guy like that, Adam Peters knows him, so I mean, he can give you context on all that stuff. But typically, if you're talking via trade, there's a reason those guys are available, and they're not. It's not always because they have the football product in mind first, right?
Mm.
The other side of that is again just kind of getting to know your roster, and at this wave of free agency, like sign as many 1-year deals as you want. I think right now, including Pierre, I think they now need 12 more players. If they use all 9 picks, they need 12 more players to flesh out a 90-man roster. Typically, teams bring in 10 to 20 undrafted free agents. So even if you're going to bring in, say, 8 undrafted free agents, go out there and sign 5, 6 more 1-year contracts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can sign as many 1-year deals, honestly, as you want. That's, to me, that's free chicken. As long as your owner is
Yeah.
willing to pay the check, right? That's free chicken. Like go out there and, hey, this guy ran really fast. Hasn't really done anything but that. But let's see if we can get him to run really fast and do something else. Go out and sign a 1-year, whatever deal. Again, if Josh Harris is willing to write the check to go, do the digging, then you have no reason not to go excavate. So, I would anticipate that they probably will sign a couple of more people, but I don't know if you're going to get like a splash. What I've been surprised by is there's offensive tackles coming in, like no new tackles coming in. I knew this was a weak offensive tackle free agent class where your talent was old and your youth was not very talented, but I still expected at least one new guy. You know what I mean? So I am a little bit surprised there, but again, doesn't mean they haven't had the talks. It might just mean another team outbid them on somebody.
I totally understand that, and I agree with you there. Next question I have for you. Looking back now, I know I said I didn't want to look in the past. I'm already doing it again. Was it a good idea to trade Montez Sweat and Chase Young for the capital that they did get?
Yes on Chase. I mean, without a doubt. And
Okay.
I mean, I said that
Don't,
when it happened.
the only reason I say it is smart with Montez is because I don't think Montez would fit schematically, and it was expensive. I know that we have money, but I feel like if you're gonna have this much turnover on the roster, you want to start bare. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
So if you know, and I think that was part of it. I think they kind of knew they were moving on from the coaching staff, at that time as well. Knowing what we know now, Joe Witt Jr. and all that stuff, does Montez really fit? You have a point there. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, because they like to use a lot of odd front stuff. I expect them to use a lot of odd front stuff. Is Montez a stand-up outside linebacker? If you make him like one of 4 stand-up linebackers, I don't know. Is he good enough to be a down interior or not interior, but a broad I can't remember the term, but a defensive end who's playing in the B gap. I can't remember the term for whatever reason. I don't know if he's at the muscle for it. He's not a weak dude, but I don't know if he's at the muscle for it.
Right.
Like a William Golston type from Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you look at it that way, and certainly you could connect the dots, right? At the time, I didn't like it, but I understood it. You know what I mean? And the thing that you hate is as a team, like you like a guy, and I'll tell you right now, Montez was liked right in the organization. Like I don't think anybody traded him with like a get out the door and don't let it hit you on the way out type of an attitude. But of course, it doesn't matter what capital you get back for him. If he goes out and does well with his other team, there's going to be questions. You know what I mean? But I understood why they did it then. I still didn't like it. I don't like it now. I would rather have Montez in Washington, to be quite honest with you. But I get why they did it. I still get why they did it, and I do agree with you that knowing what we know now with this staff, there perhaps could have been a miscommunication. And if this staff comes in and says Montez doesn't fit, he's a free agent, he's walking away. And, at best, you're getting a third round pick for him in 2026, whereas now you get that early second round pick. So it all worked out, I think, in the end.
I'm with you there, and obviously Joe Witt and Dan Quinn, they're not gonna listen to this, but if they ever did, like obviously we want good football players, and that's always the end all be all with this sort of thing. Last question I have for you, sir. What's going to go down with number 2? I know that you've told us before, but have you had any changes? Any rumor mill? What are you feeling about that number 2 overall pick? Do you feel more highly now in JJ McCarthy than you did a week ago?
Mm-hmm. No rumor mill. So we have the league meetings happening next week. I'm actually leaving for Orlando myself tomorrow morning. My family and I are driving down. We're going to make a little mini vacation out of it. So
I just did that
maybe
drive down and back in one weekend.
Yeah, it's rough, right? It's rough. So, but it'll be worth it. So maybe some rumor stuff after that. I don't know. This organization with this new leadership has been very tight-lipped, which is great. Great for them, not so great for us. But here's my opinion. My opinion on it is this: you can win with all 4 of the top quarterbacks. You know what I mean? And I was definitely one of the ones who had a top 3. JJ McCarthy was the best of the second level of quarterbacks. But I now have him, I think, just like everybody else, so I'm not unique there. But I think I have it as a top 4. And then there's the second tier of like Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. I think Spencer Rattler and Michael Pratt are like the third level, and they're kind of like they're like career backups. They might start because of an injury type of guy. I think you can win with all 4 of these guys. And I think that's the thing that like I wish everybody would remember when we have these mock draft conversations or these prospect conversations is there is not just one quarterback that is going to be successful in the NFL. Right. There is the potential for all 4 of these guys to be successful. There's the potential for all 4 of these guys to bomb. A lot of it has to do with the person and the fit, right? Like the talent of the player is not necessarily the real question. The question is, how does the player adapt to their environment? How does the environment adapt to the player? I say this all the time. One of the reasons Justin Fields flamed out in Chicago and Locked On Bears host Lauren Cox and everybody I know who covers the Bears will tell you this, is that they put the blame for that whole thing not working at about 80-20 Bears, right? So it's about 80% on the Bears, 20% on Justin Fields. Now, Justin's not innocent, but more so, than not. And I think the widest range you would get is 60-40, but it's still majority of the organization, right? So I ask you this: if you put Patrick Mahomes in Chicago, is he Patrick Mahomes? The same year that the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes, the Bears could have drafted Mitchell Trubisky. The Chicago Bears absolutely torched Mitchell Trubisky's potential. They could have done the same thing to Patrick Mahomes, and there's nothing saying that they wouldn't have done the same thing to Patrick Mahomes. If Lamar Jackson goes to an offense that wants him to stand in the pocket as a rookie instead of using his athleticism, he's not Lamar Jackson, right? So it's not about the name; it's about the fit. And so in that sense, as long as this organization, this coaching staff actually understands who they are and who they want, then they will know what the right answer is. As far as who I think that right answer is, I think the right answer is either Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy. And it has nothing to do with Marcus Mariota. Wow. It has everything to do with Cliff Kingsbury and has everything to do with Dan Quinn. Because Cliff Kingsbury, we already know, like he's not an air raid coordinator, and I'm not one of those guys, but he is a dude who likes to air the ball out. He likes to use the run to set up the deep pass, and he likes his quarterbacks. I don't say he likes it. He requires his quarterbacks to have the ability to be a weapon with the ball in their hand, right? They don't want the Steve Kerr point guard. They want the Steph Curry. They want the guy that can kill you himself, because defenses traditionally only have to defend 10 players on the field. And if you want to take the offensive line off of it, you can subtract even 5 from there. With a quarterback that can be a weapon on his own, they have to add another layer to their defense, and it just makes their life harder. Cliff Kingsbury likes that. His record says that he likes that. Dan Quinn wants to be aggressive. He wants to be explosive. So it just fits. You know what I mean? It just fits. Now, Drake May is certainly mobile enough to operate an offense. You know what I mean? Correct. But I don't think he's weapon by himself enough to pique Cliff Kingsbury's interest. And honestly, Caleb Williams, I don't think Caleb Williams is weapon enough by himself at the NFL level to be their top quarterback. Now, and again, in the world of evaluations, like, does Caleb do enough of the other stuff? Like Jaden Daniels, you don't see the middle of the field throws, with anticipation and accuracy enough. Like, does Caleb's ability to do that outweigh his maybe his lesser ability of athleticism? I'm not saying he doesn't have athleticism. Honestly, man, I think with this coaching staff and this scenario and looking at what they're doing for the future already, like they're taught, like this entire offseason is set up for past 2024. They're going to compete as best they can in 2024. But everything they're doing, look, again, we just talked about the cap situation. Look
Yeah,
at everything this team is doing.
you're right.
It's not about 2024. It's about 2025. You know what I mean? And if you're going that route, who has the higher ceiling? JJ McCarthy or Jaden Daniels? Honestly.
Don't make
Part of me wants to say JJ might. Part of me says Jaden certainly has the higher floor. Is JJ going to continue to develop? That's the question, because he's a little bit younger, he's a little bit less experienced. Has he hit his collegiate ceiling, right? So like the theory is if he came back for college ball next year, he'd be the best quarterback in the land, hands down. Nobody would touch him. If that's the case, then you see there's a lot more ceiling to go. So that's part of the evaluation process, man. It's a lot of fun. We're actually doing our network mock draft tonight, and I have been on the phone for like the last 36 hours with so many different hosts. I mean, we attack this thing like we're actual GMs. Like we're saying, I'm like, no, you're not gonna get my third, man. You might get my fourth. Like, and I've been in a lot of talks for the number 2 overall pick. I'm not going to share what I'm going to do with it, but I will tell you that the fact that I believe that JJ McCarthy in the right system with the right people could actually have a higher ceiling, because I think right now he makes every throw on the field. Jaden makes most of the throws on the field. The throws he makes now, he makes better than JJ. But JJ makes every throw. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I can get JJ to make every throw a little bit better and a little bit more mature and with a smarter and all that stuff, and I think that the athleticism is equal enough, that's why I think JJ could have the higher ceiling, not because he's a better raw athlete or a better individual in a vacuum quarterback or have a better Madden rating, but because of what's being built in Washington, his potential here could be higher than what Jaden brings. But it's a fun conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate it, David. I can't thank you enough for your time here and being able to talk with me and help out my audience here, so you didn't have to listen to my annoying voice the entire time. Before you get out of here, we'd just like to show your show and your social media handle, just in case anybody watching hasn't followed you yet, brother, and would like to, and also would like to view the mock draft.
Yeah, on Twitter, dharrison82, and then Locked On Commanders 5 days a week. That's my podcast. You can find it anywhere. The mock draft, so we're doing it tonight, but the mock draft won't air until April. Okay. They do all the graphics and all that stuff. So that'll be coming. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, man, I appreciate the invite. Sorry again that I was late, but I appreciate your patience with me.
Don't worry at all, man.
The Sports Illustrated stuff is it's wild, y'all. So
I'm sure it is, David. Have a good night, brother. Enjoy the mock draft, and we'll make sure to let everyone know when that comes out, brother. Have a good night.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, man. All right, everybody, we just spoke with the man, Mr. David Harrison. Always appreciate David's time, and saved by the grace of Mr. Steve Lim. How are you doing on this beautiful Thursday, sir?
I'm good. Always fun to make a spot start, a cameo here on the Burgundy, though, man. I had so many more questions that I need to get inside David's head about the.
You should have said something. I would have asked. I would have let you.
That's okay. That's okay. I was just trying to find my place, but he mentioned a lot about JJ being an athlete, make all the throws and being mobile, and Jaden doing the same thing. But why not Drake? He said JJ hasn't matured yet. We don't know what JJ's going to be like. You can say the same thing about Drake May. The kid's 23. He only started for 2 years. You don't know what he's going to be like. So
I understand your argument. It's a great one, because you could say that if there's anyone that's comparable to Drake May in this class, you could say it's JJ McCarthy.
Right.
Right. Like it's more so him than anybody else.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of see where Jaden's going, but I don't think you know where Drake May is going or JJ McCarthy is going. So I think you kind of can put those two together. And is it just because he won the national championship that he might be, in his eyes, moving past Drake May? I don't know, but I think you have to ask the same questions about JJ as you do with Drake. That's all I wanted to ask him about. But,
yeah, and I think Hall said it really well, in that like teams know that that Kyle Shanahan could win with somebody like JJ McCarthy, and that might give him more of the leg up on the situation. But it's a great counter argument, because the funny thing about Drake May is, like our friend of the show, Ian Cummings, has Drake May as the number 1 overall quarterback. Yeah. But then you see like Jay Gruden say, he's going to need a developmental guy. He's going to be probably the 4th or 5th, and it's just crazy, the discrepancy of a quarterback like that. It's going to be hilarious to be able to watch what's going down in April. I said it months ago. This is going to be one of the craziest off seasons of Washington history, and it is not disappointing, Steve, whatsoever.
No, and I just hope that this is a legacy that we in Washington have always like the other guy, or we have our guy, and we get into these camps. And I just hope that whoever this draft pick is, that there's not some resentment from the fan base moving forward. If your guy didn't get selected, that's okay. We're building this thing right with Peters from the ground up. Let's just support our guy. We don't need another, we didn't want Robert, so we're on the Kirk boat. Like, let's just get behind this dude, whoever he is, and just support him. We don't need to break into these camps, no matter what.
Absolutely. Like Hall and I talk about this all the time. It's like the first time in our history that, or as long as we've been alive, that our organization will be behind a top 5 quarterback in perpetuity. Every single asset going into support and building behind it. It's something awesome to see, Steve, that these other teams have been able to have the benefit of, and to finally be able to see that and coming in to flip, like even the indication of them trading Sam Howell, like that tells you that's a grown-up move. A lot of fans might not like it, but that's a grown-up move.
It is. You had to make a tough call with that because he could have questionably been a starter. So for us to say, Sam Howell, we love you, bro, but you got to go. You're right. It's an adult decision that was made, and people are not happy with it. But that's the tough love this team needs going forward.
Yeah, and look, I was kind of upset about Cam Curl leaving. But me myself, I'm a growing person. Like I'm not an end all be all by any stretch. I got to learn myself, and this being a business, it's just another stepping stone for us because we are kind of new in this kind of phase, and it was different for me because I had more hands on in the process, and when I put my hands on things, I don't like to see things fail. And I felt like it definitely was going in that direction. That's what I was really upset about. But this is a business, and I understand that all that matters, dude, is that the player is getting compensated for what they feel like, and that the team feels that they are better. That's all that matters at the end of the day.
That's it. We as fans, we get caught up in the emotion side
Right.
of the game, where the team is in the business side. And I think as content creators, we kind of teeter both of those sides, and at least we try to. But it's hard to take the fan out of it. So I feel your pain. I love Cam too. Like last time I was on here, I was like, we were going through the different potential free agents, and my first thing was, I think you got to get Cam signed.
Mm-hmm.
That was like my number one thing, is find a way to get Cam signed. And it'll work out. So I wish him all the best. He's living it up on the West Coast in LA with Sean McVay. So hey, he went to a great spot, and I hope it works out well for him.
Yes, he did. I know that they went to SoFi last season when we played them, and that was kind of like a scouting, I guess you could say. But
sure.
Steve, before we are joined by our next guest to wrap up this episode and answering fan questions with that guest, this question was submitted by Tony Franchise on Twitter. I want to get your opinion on it. He said, I want the Commanders to take a wide receiver in the draft. What wide receiver do you like? He said, I'm partial to Xavier Leggett and Johnny Wilson.
Xavier Leggett's my guy. So Tony, I'm with you. I see eye to eye. Xavier Leggett's my guy. I mean, you don't need to go for the burner. Was it Worthy? I think it was Worthy was his name.
Xavier Worthy from Texas.
Xavier Worthy. Yeah, I'm a Leggett fan myself. So I'm with you. I feel like he could be a great compliment to Terry and Jahan. I just like what he does. So for those reasons, I would hope that we can find a way to get him. I'm not sure exactly what round he's going to go in. Maybe 3. Maybe I don't know how far up the boards he's going to push, but big Xavier Leggett fan myself.
Yeah, and that's the big question, Steve, because like what you're doing there is you're using logic to come to your decision. Like, it's easy to say, yeah, we should take a wide receiver with the top pick in the second round, but then you're saying, wait, what about left tackle? What about right tackle? What about corner? What about linebacker?
But then we also have 2 2s and 2 3s. So I keep forgetting that.
Exactly.
I keep forgetting that. So there's so much. It's so exciting, man. We've never been in this
position. It really is.
And
like I'm a huge fan of Xavier legit Leggett. I think that the dude is legit. I think that he is somebody who offers you the size, the catching ability, the way that he, even though the catches are contested, how he still comes down with the football, still raw in a sense. So that you could still get more out of him. But what was the main character in the Children of the Corn? What was his name?
That I do not remember.
Was it Malachi?
I think so.
I can't remember. Or is it Jebediah? I can't remember, dude. I think it was Malachi. But Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken, the kid is a blazing fast speed.
It's Malachi.
It is Malachi? Yeah, I got it right.
Good memory.
With Malachi Corley, he's like Children of the Corn. He's coming for your parents and everybody. Speed demon. And so my thought process is when Cliff was in Arizona, Steve, I felt like their offense was limited by not having a taller number one possession type of wide receiver. Like it was easy to defeat them going against Marquise Brown, going against Rondale Moore, because they were all the same similar type of wide receiver. I feel like that's what we have here in Washington at the moment. So I would much rather go down the route of getting a bigger guy like Xavier Leggett, or going down like a Donnie Mitchell
Mitchell.
from
Yeah.
Texas coming out, or somebody like that. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
But I also understand that if you were able to get speed, you have to go over the top with it, like the Dolphins, where they have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So if you are going to go down the route of a smaller guy, he better be lightning freaking fast. And that's why I'm looking at somebody like Malachi Corley, where that
Mhm.
makes sense, where that you could add that into the room to say, there's so much speed there. How are you going to limit it?
Yeah, for
If we
sure.
can't get speed like that, that's where I like the taller wide receivers. The route that I'm going down. Johnny Wilson is another one. They were talking about the group chat the other day. 6'7", huge dude, absolutely gigantic of a human, and he's already shot down the rumors of switching a tight end. But that's another guy you could go down the route later in the draft where you're feeling good about. And then we can't forget about Jerry Rice's son, Brendan Rice.
Just saw him on the pro day with Caleb. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's like 6'2", 6'1", if I'm not mistaken. So
just
he
over
has
200 pounds.
he has some size to him as well. So that's always a route that you can go down in this draft. So you feel good about wide receiver. Corner, wide receiver, tackle in the first, I guess you could say tackle in the first round, 2 rounds is probably where you feel the safest. But that's one of the thinner positions. Wide receiver is plentiful. And that's why having a free agent wide receiver right now is probably not the best thing to do.
Right.
You know, everyone's saying that you could trade Terry McLaurin. If I'm another team, why would I? I would just wait for the draft.
Stock in, yeah, exactly. Spend nothing.
Right.
The draft capital.
See, Steve, this is why I like Steve, man.
Another guy, I mean, I think he's out of reach for us because I think he's going to go in the late first, maybe early second. Luke McConkey.
Oh, McConkey. Lad McConkey.
I'm sorry, Lad. Yeah, Lad McConkey.
How dare you not remember his name is Lad? Like, that's like a normal name.
I know. Look, I don't know why I was thinking. Maybe I was thinking of the other is McCaffrey. Luke McCaffrey. Is that?
Yes.
Is that okay? So I was getting those two mixed up. But I
both
feel like
wide receivers too, to your credit. So you can't.
Lad McConkey is. I feel like he's just going to be good in the NFL, and he's just really kind of underrated. So not that we're going to get him. I just want to throw it out there. I think I like what he's putting out.
Oh, no, absolutely. Like Big Doug kind of talks about him a lot, and he gives you Doug's biased. That Wes Welker kind of aspect to him, where he doesn't blow you off the screen of saying this is going to be a top guy, but if you put him in a very good situation, he's going to be one of the most productive wide receivers in the league. Like if let's say he were to go to Kansas City, in. That dude's getting 100 catches, 1,000 yards receiving.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about it ever again.
Historically, guys with that character and guys that provide that service usually go way later in the draft. But McConkey, I feel like he's top 10 on the wide receiver big boards everywhere you look. So I don't know. Should be exciting.
And watch Wes Welker get him in Miami with him. I'm pretty sure he's the wide receivers coach down there for the Dolphins, so it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But Steve, this next question was submitted by Tim Towner in our Discord. Thank you, Tim. Odds that Washington offense finishes top 16.
Top 16 odds. If you're asking me right now without knowing who the quarterback is.
That's like saying an RG3 type year with a rookie quarterback. Around that, because you got to remember, everyone likes to think of RG3's year that as soon as he got on the field, it was rockets. You got to remember, we had a code red game in like week 6 or 7. We had to fight our way back, right? It wasn't like they were baller all year, but they were number 1 rushing offense, but it's similar type of output.
That's right. Man, without having all these gaps filled, I'm just going to play it safe and say the odds will be 16 or lower, just because I don't want to get my expectations too high, and that's just how my brain works.
With the tight end room and everything going on, Tim, I think that the odds are high, and I know that I'm not very good with Burgundy Zone does math. I know you're probably keeping tabs on. You're not telling anybody, in which I'm probably lacking poorly at this point. But I will say the odds are high, and the reason why I say that is you're adding in Cliff Kingsbury with what this offense has, and already having Brian Robinson, and then adding Austin Eckler into it, having Zach Ertz being that outlet. I think that there is a good chance that this team could be top 16, top half of the league. Like, they could just be in that bubble. And I don't think it's that hard to do. Like, we shouldn't be saying that it's going to be hard for Cliff Kingsbury with a number 2 overall pick quarterback to be able to put out a top 16 type of performance. I don't think that's too crazy, but, you know.
And I like where your head is, Kyle. I mean, you kind of talked me into it. You sold me, right? I'll buy the car from you. But when you put it the way you put it, and the way you put it, in that scenario, it sounds like the pressure is not all on the quarterback to perform. You put the
Correct.
ball in the playmaker's hand, let them make the play, and then where in the past we haven't really had that sort of luxury.
Exactly. And that's why I thought Caleb was the best bet for this football team in particular,
Right.
because he already did that at USC,
He did.
where he's
He
getting the
did.
ball out fast along the line of scrimmage. We have the playmakers that can do it in space. They can also do it long if possible. It's just that big body catcher, and then adding a pass catcher in Austin Eckler, it really makes you wonder, Steve.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I'm going crazy.
Yeah.
Now, the next question that we have is from Tim Towner again. What is your biggest remaining position of need that Washington can address in free agency? So when the draft arrives, they will be able to select the best player available.
Ooh, free agency.
It's hard. I kind of answered this when we opened up the show. For me personally, Steve, it feels like the lull time, because like you don't want to sign somebody and then take yourself out of that position in the draft. Like you want to
Right.
be able to draft somebody. If you're in that position, it's the best player available, you want to be able to go get him. And like that's my concern, is getting a guy now and taking you out of that position.
Man, this is a tough one. We've addressed so many pieces in free agency so far. I feel like they're set. Like whatever they haven't got now, they're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna get another free agency start later unless there's a domino out there that I'm not tracking. That's just waiting for the right scenario to open up. I feel like they got who they got in free agency, and the rest is going to be filled through the draft. So that I don't think there's anyone, a big name we're going to get that's going to be penciled in as a starter. That I mean, I'm put me on the spot, but yeah, I'm having trouble thinking of that. What did you say earlier?
I don't honestly. I said corner, and the only reason I said that is I tried to say that I would rather go through the draft for corner, but I
Yeah,
could see how if they are not able to get one, that they could sign a corner afterwards. And that's what my whole thought process here was, like a Stephon Gilmore type of, where it
yeah,
makes sense as a number one to put him in there, somebody that knows your system, and you don't
sure.
have to worry about it anymore. But I will
Yeah,
say this, left tackle probably, and I'm only saying that before Cornelius Lucas. Like,
okay.
if you asked me in the offseason, Steve, before we let go of Leno,
Yep,
before Lucas was over, I would have told you I think it's smarter to retain Lucas and let Leno walk. And so
agree.
right now I'm a happy man at left tackle. I think that we are in the good position to get a starter if we need to, but we also have somebody there that if they needed to start, they can.
Right, and I think Lucas is kind of who's the guy that we used to have that went to the Buffalo the utility tackle
Ty
player
and
we had.
Seki.
Kind of, yeah, give me Ty and Seki vibes. I feel like he can fill in at multiple positions, but yeah, and
I
last
miss
time I was on the
Ty,
show
man.
too, I also talked about Stephon. I thought Stephon Gilmore would be someone to watch too. I know he's like 33, but like you said, he has that familiarity. But they're probably the scenario like you said, where they'll probably go back to the free agency market after the draft to plug those gaps.
I'm with you. Now, the next question is from Deluxe in the Discord. Now that more time has passed to evaluate the 16 outside free agent signings, have any of your thoughts changed from the initial impression? Who are you most excited about now? Luvu for me.
Oh, so of all the free agent signings, I will say it's Luvu for me, but it's Luvu not because of Luvu. It's Luvu. You know what? Okay, I'm going to reshape his question. It's the middle linebacker. It's the linebacker position in general of
Okay,
all
I got you.
the free agents because of what it will do for Jamin Davis. I'm excited to see what the 19th overall pick of that draft can do with a true middle linebacker. He doesn't have to put the green dot on his helmet. He can fly around, and I really feel like they're going to use him as a Micah Parsons light. So with Luvu and then with Bobby Wagner being in the middle and Luvu, reinforcing, I think Jamin's going to be a free roamer, and I think that's where he's going to excel. So I'll say Luvu and Wagner together are my favorite free agent signings, just so we can see what Jamin Davis can do, and that's exciting.
Have any of my thoughts changed from the initial impression? I guess the one you could say is probably Mariota, because I kind of hated on Mariota for a little bit. I didn't make sense why we picked him up with Sam Howell there, but it makes sense now. Obviously, I knew that we were gonna. I knew Sam Howell was the most valuable. I just didn't know if they felt the same way and they would execute it. So with Mariota, I was kind of questioning it because I've kind of had a poo-pooed Mariota for a couple years, but I understand it now in the sense of having that backup ready to go that could put the ball out there where it needs to be. But in all seriousness, I would say Allegrati. Nick Allegrati, the guard that we got from Kansas City. And the one thing that stood out to me is he stole my facial hair. Have you seen this? If you look at him, he has my facial, but it's like my buddy James Goss, who I played football with in high school. He has the same type of hair mine, but it's like way wider, and like the hair is much more prevalent in this area. But he has the same look I do. And so yes, my impressions have changed after I watched his presser and hearing him talk about that. He said the only difference, I can still play with this injury, but it's just pain, and that's up to me. And I was good to go from that point. Like that sold me on Oligrati, because I've said so many times, I want a lineman that bends his finger in half, like, and then still plays and fights hard, doesn't care about it, And that's that he epitomizes that. So I'll probably say him.
Yeah, and I didn't mind Marcus Mariota. Going back to your first point before, what soured me with Marcus Mariota was the quarterback show that was on Amazon Prime last year with Mahomes, Kirk, and Mariota. And how he just quit when they threatened, when they were going to jump out and start Desmond Ridder, who I remember you being very high on in the pre-draft rankings years ago. So yeah, I guess that kind of soured my look. But Mariota's press conference, he came out and said, if I'm here to be a mentor to someone, I'll do that. And so for him to say that, I'm pretty sure they probably told him, listen, bro, you're gonna be a backup, you're gonna be a mentor, and that's what you're here for. So I don't mind the Mariota sighting so much. At first I was like, yeah, but once he said it, I was like, okay, cool.
You guys got to understand, all right? I take like draft evals very seriously. And so what I was seeing back then with the Ridder draft is I was seeing everybody and their mother saying Rivera and them are going to sit on their hands. They're not going to trade up for one of these quarterbacks and do what a winner would do. And they don't have the balls to do what they should do with these quarterbacks. My whole point was, you're an idiot if you do that. You're going to be in the same exact position after giving away your assets. There's no reason to do it. And so my whole thought process with Ridder was, I can find you a better quarterback prospect later in the draft without having to trade up for it. And that was my whole thought process with Ridder. And that's why I put out the tweet, Ridder checks all the boxes, which got Mark Tyler all riled up, which got my boy Valdovinos all riled up. But my point being was, I'm just trying to let you know that I can find a quarterback later on that can do exactly what these other guys do and not have to give away any assets for it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think we kind of shared the same sentiment about Kellen Mond a couple years before that.
Dude, no, that is my big mistake.
Is it?
I was a Mond guy.
Yeah, but I liked what he had to offer in the right situation. I feel like he could have been successful, but we'll see. We see how that went.
I think my mistake there was probably the throwing motion and just wanting to see something in the same breath. But yes, that was definitely my one big mistake. I will say I was a Mond guy. But look, I was young in the process, Steve. We all grow and we get better.
With new information, you can grow and make new opinions.
Absolutely, Steve. I can't thank you enough for joining me tonight, man. It really was a pleasure doing this last minute for me. And the two mics were busy, but you did a great job of stepping in for them and being able to help me out a little bit here. I know you have a busy day. You got your own kids. You got your own pod. So before we get out of here, would you like to plug the podcast and your social media handle, brother?
Sure. Yeah, you can catch podcast Command This Podcast. Just Google it. We're on all the socials, and I'm also at Steve Lim, Steve Lim _DC on Twitter. So look to see you guys out there in the social medias, and come check out the podcast if you get some time. And thanks for having me, Kyle. Always a pleasure.
And one of the best tailgates that you'll go to, like Hall will tell you, we went to last year for week 1. It was raining. And it was it was raining hard, and everyone was trying to find a place to hide under. Steve allowed us to come under his umbrella, and him and your co-host name, Phil. Damn, I can't remember his name. We're cooking up, and they made us all hot dogs, burgers, and they were feeding everybody, dude. So I'm telling you, follow Steve. He deserves it. Fantastic human, served our country, serves people on the regular, and just an awesome frickin' dude. So make sure you guys go and do that. Steve, I can't thank you enough, man. You're the best, bro. Seriously.
Bro. Yep.
All right, everybody. We'll see you guys again on Monday. Have a great, safe weekend. Enjoy these pro day hysteria. We'll see you guys again next week. We'll see you then. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.